Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday afternoon, December the 12th. I've just posted an article on the upcoming weather situation at ArcfieldWeather.com. I thought we'd kind of go through that posting, so a little bit unusual format here for this particular video discussion. We'll end up with a kind of a more conventional look at the latest model run, the 12Z version of the GFS, both the 500 millibars and the surface weather maps here. But I thought we'd just kind of walk through this posting here, and I'll go through a lot of the plots and diagrams that are out there. Again, for more information, just go to arcfieldweather.com. It looks like a very interesting weather pattern, to say the least, going forward through the second half of December and likely into January as well. There are several signals that I'm looking at that point to additional Arctic air outbreaks for the central and eastern states. Certainly December has started off with a few cold air outbreaks into the eastern half of the nation. Quite a cold first week, for example, of December, one of the coldest since 2002 for much of the eastern part of the nation. Again, numerous signals, and we'll talk about those signals, point to additional cold air outbreaks. At the same time, it looks like quite an active weather pattern. There will be multiple storm systems, it looks like, to deal with as we progress through the second half of December and perhaps into the month of January as well. Again, starting to take a look right here at the posting right now out there at arcfieldweather.com, an upcoming active weather pattern with several signals, and we'll talk about the Madden-Julian oscillation, stratospheric warming event, and a teleconnection index that we often look at here, the Pacific North American Index, all pointing to the possibility, the likelihood, in my opinion, of additional cold air outbreaks for the central and eastern states. So let's just kind of scroll down here. And first of all, this is a kind of an eye-opener here. This is the forecast map from this morning's GFS of the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern for next Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday, December the 22nd. There certainly are some signals on multiple computer forecast models for a strong system somewhere near the East Coast, somewhere in that time frame of, let's say, Friday the 20th to Sunday the 22nd. This is quite an impressive upper level low way down in the southeastern states that could produce some kind of a storm system near the mid-Atlantic coastline. Of course, way too early to determine any of the details so far. This could end up being just, if it does even come to fruition, just could be snow in those interior higher elevations that we've kind of featured so far this month. But this is certainly an eye-opener type of 500 millibar pattern. That's kind of what I mean here by an active weather pattern. We'll have some pretty strong high-pressure ridges and deep upper-level low centers over the next couple of weeks, and again, likely into the month of January. So we'll, again, in a moment here, look at the 500 millibar pattern as it evolves through the week. Again, this is the forecast map for Sunday, December 22nd. So now let's scroll down here and certainly go back and take a look at the text here, but here's another map of interest. This is the 0Z run of the Euro from last night. Temperature pattern, the 2-meter temperature anomaly for that 5-day period as shown right here from the 20th to the 25th. So right up to Christmas Day, very impressive chill across the eastern half of the nation as depicted here by this particular model run. These are the 2-meter temperature anomalies averaged out over that 5-day period from the 20th, which is next Friday, to the 25th. Actually Christmas Eve on the 24th, but nonetheless, this encompasses that time period of next weekend, which again, some signs point to a potential strong storm near the East Coast. Just wanted to point out that there are many signs here. We'll go through some of these signals over the next couple of minutes here for a colder weather pattern as we go through the month of December, even into January. Well, let's start off with the Madden-Julian oscillation. This is a teleconnection index that I often used during the summer tropical season. It also can be an important factor during the winter season, as we, of course, are entering right now the winter of 24-25. The way to look at these particular kinds of plots is that the Madden-Julian oscillation, which really means the location of a tropical disturbance, an area of thunderstorms, for example, right along the equatorial part of the tropics, and the particular location of that tropical disturbance is depicted on this kind of a plot in what we call the different phases. These phases run through phase 1 through 8, and each of these phases has been correlated pretty well with temperature and precipitation patterns across different parts of the world, including the U.S. Now, it looks like these move counterclockwise on these kind of plots, and this is the forecast of the MJO in this time frame from today through the first 11 days of January, basically moving into phase 6 at the end of next week. This is around the 21st of December, and gradually moving its way into phase 7. Now, again, these particular phases have been pretty well correlated with specific kinds of temperature patterns, for example, across the U.S. Now, let's take a look at these phases and those temperature composites right now. Well, here's much of the plot here that, again, is out there right now on this particular posting at arcfieldweather.com. This is phase 6, phase 7, and phase 8. Now, I want to point out that this time of the year, phase 6 is often a warm signal for the MJO. If the MJO is in phase 6, usually during this time of the year, that often is correlated with warmer than normal conditions across the eastern half of the nation, as depicted here in that particular plot. However, and we'll show this in a moment, in the month of December during a La Nina winter, which we are certainly experiencing right now, it's actually not a warm signal. It's, if anything, it's a cold signal. So again, if you specifically look at the month of December in a La Nina winter, phase 6 shows quite a different story, and we'll show that in a moment. Phase 7, phase 8 are typically colder than normal patterns for the central and eastern U.S., and certainly by the time we get to January, the early part of January, it looks like we'll be moving through, the MJO will be moving through phase 8, phase 7, probably into phase 8. So again, really all three of these phases beginning, let's say, next weekend on for a few weeks, can certainly provide a signal for colder than normal conditions for much of the eastern 2/3 of the nation. Now, here is what I mean by phase 6. It's kind of a different appearance to it when you're in a La Nina winter in the month of December. And again, we've talked about La Nina, El Nino. We certainly have colder than normal sea surface temperatures out across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean, definitely in a La Nina type pattern, at least here in the month of December. And when you look at December with a negative ENSO, meaning La Nina, and phase 6, this is kind of what is typical, and this is high pressure ridging out across the western U.S., maybe the southwestern part of Canada, kind of a deep upper level trough centered right near the Great Lakes. That is not a warm type of pattern for the central and eastern U.S. So again, even though phase 6 in normal circumstances may be a warm phase this time of the year, when you have a La Nina in the month of December, it's not quite a warm phase. So this is quite an interesting pattern here for this particular phase of the MJO. Well, yet another signal for additional cold air outbreaks, Arctic air outbreaks for the central and eastern U.S. Comes from what we call the stratospheric warming event. It looks like one is unfolding right now that will lead to a disruption of the polar vortex. And I have a lot of the details on exactly what that phenomenon is in this posting, so please go to arcfieldweather.com for more detailed information on a stratospheric warming event. But whenever that polar vortex, it typically sits on top of the polar region this time of the year, whenever that is disrupted, either weakened or displaced onto one side of the pole, that often unleashes some cold air masses from the high latitudes into the middle latitudes. These particular forecast maps center around Christmas Day. The one on the left is for the December 24th, the one on the right, December 26th. And what we're looking at here are the 10 millibar, or very high up in the atmosphere, the stratospheric level. What we're looking at are temperature anomalies. And this can be thought of as that polar vortex that is stretched out all the way southward into the southern part of the U.S. by the 24th, and surrounded by warmer air. I say warmer air because it's still very cold air, but it's relatively warm compared to this air mass right here. Again, we're looking at the stratospheric level. 2 days later, similar, that polar vortex continues to be kind of stretched out over the northeastern part of the U.S. with a lot of warmer air surrounding it over the stratospheric level, over the polar region. This is typically a cold signal. It often leads to the transport of cold air masses from northern Canada into the central and eastern U.S., in other words, from those high latitudes into the middle latitudes. So again, another signal for additional cold air outbreaks going forward here is this developing stratospheric warming event, and we'll certainly talk about that over the next few weeks. Now, the interesting thing about a stratospheric warming event, and I tend to detail this in the posting here, is that typically it has an impact several weeks after it begins to unfold. So it's starting to unfold right now, so this could lead to additional cold air outbreaks well into the month of January for the central and eastern states. Now, yet another teleconnection index that we'll talk about here is called the PNA, the Pacific North American Teleconnection Index. It has temperature and pressure patterns in the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean, the western part of North America involved in its calculation. And as many of these teleconnection indices do, they feature positive or negative phases. We often look at the North Atlantic Oscillation, the Arctic Oscillation. Well, when the PNA is in a positive phase, as is depicted here on this upper left map here, typically you have higher pressure than normal across the western U.S. and the western part of Canada, maybe lower pressure than normal out across the eastern part of the U.S. And that is basically a colder than normal pattern temperature-wise for the central and eastern U.S. So again, this is a positive phase right here of the PNA, and we'll show in a moment here that it looks like the PNA will indeed be in a positive phase for much of the rest of the month of December, as forecasted by most computer forecast models. So whenever you have a ridge out in the west, that allows for the transport of cold air masses from northern Canada into the central and eastern U.S. And here's the forecast plot shown in red here from the ensemble run of the GFS. This is beginning with today and then running through the end of the month of December. It stays in that positive territory for the next couple of weeks, right to the end of the month of December. And again, a positive PNA generally is correlated with that high pressure ridging along the west coast of the U.S. and maybe the west coast of Canada. That inhibits mild Pacific air from moving into the western part of the nation. If you have as we often do during the wintertime, a screaming northern Pacific jet stream, that could push some mild Pacific air into the western part of the U.S., which could end up moving all the way across the nation. But with a PNA in positive territory, that ridge tends to force that Pacific jet to go way up to the north, maybe into Alaska, for example. So that is a cold signal is the bottom line here. And again, it looks like it stays in positive territory for the next couple of weeks at we'll call about a level of 1 here as an index. And I wanted to point that out because of the next plot that we're going to show here. And here's that plot, kind of to wrap things up again between the MJO phase 6 and now the PNA. Again, phase 6 is often a warm phase, but not when you are in the month of December with a La Nina setup across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. When PNA is at 0.5 or above in an MJO phase 6 during this time of the year, this is often what you see. Colder than normal conditions across the eastern third of the nation, and warmer than normal out across the western half of the nation. So again, PNA looks like it'll hang around that 1.0 level. So it certainly meets this threshold here. And there are two different plots here because one is based on the American models, the NOAA models forecasts of MJO, and the other one here on the right is based on the European MJO forecast model data. But again, the bottom line here is you see colder than normal conditions on average here in this century when PNA 0.5 and above, MJO phase 6 in a La Nina winter season. So let's wrap up with a more conventional way of doing the video discussion. That is what I normally do, going through some of the forecast models. This is the very latest, the 12Z GFS model from, we're taking a look here in the beginning at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern across North America, and then we'll take a look at the surface map. So again, to reiterate what we talked about at the onset here, numerous signals, including the MJO, Stratospheric warming event, and the PNA, Pacific North American Teleconnection Index, point to additional cold air outbreaks for the central and eastern states as we go through the remainder of December, even into the month of January. Overall, it looks like quite an active weather pattern as well, with multiple storms likely to deal with, especially later next weekend. There's a strong signal for something pretty strong near the eastern seaboard later next week, and let's say the 20th to the 22nd. Again, go back to the posting at arcfieldweather.com for all the details on those three signals here. Now, let's start off today, midday here on Thursday, with an upper level trough over the Hudson Bay region of Canada. And we'll just quickly move through this. And again, we talked about lots of upper level ridges, lots of upper level troughs here. We're going through the early part of the upcoming weekend and now into the early part of next week, and we'll just kind of go quickly through this and point out what it looks like will develop late next week. Here we are now, a week from right now, December 19th time frame. This is using the conventional version of the GFS from this morning's run, 12Z on Thursday. Notice that trough here starting to develop, show up quite impressively by the time now we're Friday, December 20th, and this strong upper level ridge right across the western U.S., the western part of Canada. Again, that's typically associated with that PNA plus, that positive phase of the PNA. And when you see a ridge out here, trough over here, that allows for the transport of some of these cold air masses from way up there in northern Canada into the central and eastern U.S. And again, it kind of forces any kind of Pacific mild air to go way up into near Alaska or way up there in the western, extreme western part of Canada, as opposed to flooding the U.S. with some mild Pacific air. So this is a cold looking pattern and an active looking pattern for about a week from now. This is again next Friday. Go a little bit farther in time, and this upper level feature kind of stretches, kind of dives down to the south. Still have that very strong upper level ridge at 500 millibar level centered out over the interior western U.S. and interior western part of Canada. We go all the way out into next Sunday. This is not this Sunday, but a week from this Sunday, the 22nd. And this is the same kind of map we show on that posting at arcfieldweather.com. Very vigorous upper level low all the way down into the southeastern states. Will this produce a strong storm system right along the mid-Atlantic coastline? Just a little too early to tell, but certainly this sends a red flag that there could be a strong storm system somewhere in the eastern coastal area late next week into the weekend. Again, that period, the 20th, the 21st, 22nd, it's something to watch here. We'll go out a little bit farther in time and it kind of kicks up to the north here by the time we get to Monday, the 23rd. Well, let's wrap up with this long video discussion with the surface forecast maps. Another cold air mass right now throughout the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. below normal temperatures will continue right through the upcoming weekend. Likely to see some moderation in temperatures on Saturday and Sunday. Let's just kind of quickly go through this next several days here. We do have an active weather pattern. A weak system moves into the Mid-Atlantic region late Sunday into Sunday night. It could cause a little bit of snow up north, a little bit of rain down south, Sunday night, Monday time frame. Not a big deal. A stronger system follows pretty closely in the Monday night, Tuesday time frame. That'll have a front associated with it as well. Then a kind of a quiet couple of days, and here we go. We start to see some activity down here across the southeastern states, the Mid-Atlantic. This is as early as next Thursday, a week from right now on the 19th. And then one system kind of moves out along the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Don't be too focused on the details of that for now. And then we'll start to see a second system starting to form down here. Remember that upper level low, intense upper level low in this particular case by late the 21st, Saturday the 21st, or early Sunday the 22nd, starts to form a surface low down here across the Carolina coastline on the 22nd, and this is certainly going to be something to watch. Way too early for the details on this, but this has a lot of potential for that time period. Again, from let's say the 9th and 20th all the way to the 21st, 22nd, even the 23rd time frame. This particular forecast run goes all the way out to Monday the 23rd. So something to monitor here. Again, looks like a very active weather pattern going forward, and one that will continue to feature some Arctic air outbreaks from northern Canada into the central and eastern U.S. That's it for now for ArcfieldWeather.com. This has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.